Technological advances in security and protocol have made elaborate bank robberies largely a thing of the past. Author Peter Houlahan takes us back to an elaborate bank robbery that happened not so long ago in his new book, Norco 80, the true story of the most spectacular bank robbery in American history. The robbery happened in May of 1980. 40 miles east of Los Angeles in Riverside County, and captivated national headlines, ultimately changing the way law enforcement responded to organized crime forever.
Los Angeles had long established itself as the bank robbery capital of the world. That's what the FBI referred to it as. And a lot of it had to do with the sprawl, but mostly because of freeways. A bank robber could go in, rob a bank near a freeway on-ramp, jump on the freeway, and in 5 minutes be 5 miles away on the side streets in some completely different police jurisdiction. And so it was ripe for bank robbery to begin with. Bank robbery numbers started rising sharply when cocaine came on the scene in the late 1970s, came through the club scene, the disco scene, and really exploded. So by 1980, there was already a very sharp rise in bank robberies going on.
During the 70s, 80s, and 90s, Houlahan says most of the criminals routinely taking part in robberies were motivated by drug addiction that ran rampant.
By 1992, the FBI, the Los Angeles field office of the FBI, was dealing with 2,600 bank robberies, which is about 14 a day, including one day when they had 28 banks robbed, and one guy in particular robbed 6 banks in 4 hours. So it was a real epidemic that swept through there.
But in the case of Norco, the criminals viewed themselves as survivalists, born-again evangelicals, and were fueled by a different motivation.
The 5 young men who robbed this bank did not have any significant criminal records before this. And they were led by a guy named George Wayne Smith, who did have those apocalyptic beliefs, and a roommate named Christopher Harvin. And they put this together and recruited Chris's younger brother and 2 younger guys, Manny Delgado, 21, and his little brother, Billy Delgado, 17 years old, to drive the getaway car. George had a real grandiosity about him, and so he put together a grandiose plan that included civilian versions of military-grade weapons, thousands of rounds of ammunition, homemade fragmentation grenades they could launch from shotguns.
The amount of firepower this group had assembled was unimaginable, and something cops had never encountered before from civilian criminals.
They stole a van at gunpoint, tied up the owner, and stuffed him in the back of the van so he couldn't report it stolen. They set a diversion bomb under a gas main a mile away from the bank, hoping that would pull everyone away to that location. It fizzled, and so they went ahead at 3:30 in the afternoon and crashed into the bank. And it was chaotic, but they did get out of there in about 2.5 minutes.
The young group had planned the robbery from start to finish in just a matter of weeks. But Houlahan says that with the amount of moving parts involved, things soon started to fall apart as the police were quickly alerted and responded to the scene.
When they came right out of the bank, they were head-to-head with Glenn Belaski, and a ferocious firefight broke out in a very crowded Southern California intersection at 3:30 in the afternoon between eventually 3 Riverside County deputies and 5 heavily armed bank robbers. In that firefight, Glenn Belaski managed to fire shotgun rounds through the back of the van as it was driving away, killing 17-year-old driver Billy Delgado. So at that point, they are all stranded in their van at the intersection of 4th and Hamner, and they begin piling out of the van, grabbing all their weapons, leaving the $20,000 that they had in the van, and continued this ferocious firefight right in the middle of the intersection, in which bullets are flying through storefronts and civilian cars, and over 500 rounds were fired in that intersection.
The men stole another truck in the chaos of the firefight and were able to speed away onto the highway towards the mountains.
They proceeded to engage in a running gun battle with now dozens of police officers coming in at all different angles, and this running gun battle through the suburban streets of Riverside County. And there were a number of police officers wounded and civilians in that portion of the event. It ends 7,000 feet up on a narrow fire road when the road is washed out in front of them. And they jump out of the truck, they line up, and they ambush what is now 40 police cars, the first few cars in a pursuit line that has 40 law enforcement vehicles behind it. and there's another ferocious firefight up there, and then they disappear into the canyons of the San Gabriel Mountains for the night.
Houlahan says the 4 surviving bank robbers fled on foot into the canyons as night fell, but 3 of them were wounded and bleeding. By morning, the 3 badly injured criminals were captured, and the 4th was shot and killed later that afternoon during a police pursuit. In the aftermath of it all, several areas of suburban sunny California had been transformed into what looked like an active warfield.
The final toll on it is 3 dead, 15 wounded, including 17 law enforcement officers, and there were 33 police vehicles that were either disabled or destroyed by gunfire or these fragmentation grenades, including a San Bernardino helicopter that was shot out of the sky over Interstate 15.
In the wake of Norco, police agencies and the government re-examined its procedures and supply of firearms. Houlahan says the widespread destruction caused by these civilian criminals was a catalyst to the eventual militarization of the police.
Norco was a real wake-up call that the weapons they were starting to see on the streets, they now needed to respond, and you couldn't get more obvious than Norco. And before Norco, there were only 2 semi-automatic high-powered rifles in the entire arsenal of 2 counties, Riverside and San Bernardino, which were involved in the pursuit. But those 2 counties together are larger than New England. And they only had 2 semi-automatic rifles in the whole area. Within a year later, under political pressure and under pressure from their own deputies, those 2 departments had about 150 automatic rifles on order, and it only went up after that.
In addition, Norco was a wake-up call for agencies to look inward at how to better address mental health concerns, including post-traumatic stress disorder, among police officers and first responders who face these fiery shootouts.
The impact of traumatic events, whether it be an officer-involved shooting of a suspect or any number of things, but some of the agencies were just starting to aggressively address it. Others were still ignoring it entirely. And if someone said they were having a bad impact afterwards, they would generally retire them and encourage them to go see a psychiatrist. So the key to it is, with whether you're an EMT or a firefighter or police officer, your department, is that you make it mandatory. And that's what San Bernardino had done. So there was no stigma involved. It wasn't that they had decided that they needed to see a psychiatrist or they needed to have some counseling. They made it mandatory. And once you pull that stigma off and you put them in there, you've made a major step towards people who need it getting the help they needed. And, with post-traumatic stress disorder, there are different degrees of it. Something like this impacts some of them tremendously and others only slightly.
The book, Norco 80, The True Story of the Most Spectacular Bank Robbery in American History, is available now. To find out more about Peter Houlahan, visit viewpointsradio.org. You can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Viewpoints Radio for more behind the scenes. And subscribe and listen to our show anytime on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Our studio producer is Jason Dickey. This segment is written and produced by Amira Zaveri. I'm Marty Peterson.
Viewpoints returns in just a moment.
Electric scooters are fun, easy to use, and seemingly all over the streets. But several new studies find that e-scooters are also causing a growing number of serious injuries. One study by the CDC shows that 45% of those hurt have head injuries, while another 27% have broken arms, wrists, or hands. Half of those hurt say a pothole or a crack in the street caused their crash. Dr. Vidor Friedman is president of the American College of Emergency Physicians.
Emergency physicians are treating an increasing number of scooter-related injuries. Many of these are serious and can be life-changing, but many of these injuries are avoidable. The number one thing you can do to avoid serious injury is to wear a helmet. Scoot safe and avoid an emergency.
Studies show that about a third of those hurt are first-time scooter riders. Dr. Friedman advises to start slowly, follow the rules of the road, and be an alert rider. More safety tips are online at emergencycareforyou.org/scootsafe.
New research shows that healthy lifestyle choices may dramatically reduce the risk of dementia. 5 studies presented at the Alzheimer's Association International Conference 2019 in Los Angeles show that lifestyle factors such as a healthy diet and exercise may even counteract genetic risks for dementia. Dr. Maria Carrillo is Chief Science Officer at the Alzheimer's Association.
While there is no proven cure or treatment for Alzheimer's, a large body of research now strongly suggests that combining healthy habits promotes good brain health and reduces your risk of cognitive decline.
Along with a healthy diet and exercise, steps such as building a cognitive reserve through formal education and cognitively stimulating jobs also help provide maximum memory benefit. The new research suggests that adopting 4 or 5 healthy lifestyle factors rather than none or only one may reduce the risk of Alzheimer's dementia by nearly 60%. Find out more at alz.org.
Thank you for listening to Viewpoints Radio, a production of Media Tracks Communications. If you enjoyed this broadcast, please support our show by subscribing, sharing it with a friend, and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. You can find more Viewpoints stories on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, and viewpointsonline.net. Also, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Viewpoints Radio. Coming up next week.
15 years ago, no one had a cell phone, and now it's like 96% of the population have one.
Teaching kids how to live responsibly in the era of everything digital. Then,
yes, honey, that person has beautiful brown skin, and we don't point at people. That's not polite.
The importance of discussing race and diversity early on. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.